Hey, it's Lowery Smith of the CommanderSmiths here with searching for Spotlight Indoraptor, the perfect hybrid. One and a black or green hybrid or a red. 3/1 Bloodthirst X, which is basically as much damage as you have dealt. I should read this specifically. So this creature enters the battlefield with X/1/1 counters on it, where X is the damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Um, Reason why that's important is because life loss is not damage. Damage is almost always life loss. So this is specifically looking for damage. So there are plenty of black cards that could potentially drain your opponents. They don't work here. It has Menace, and then also it has Enrage. So whenever Indoraptor is dealt damage, which is any kind of damage, non-combat, combat, choose an opponent at random, and Indoraptor deals damage equal to the power to that player unless they sacrifice a non-token creature. So, a couple different ways you can go with this, and maybe a mix of whatever. Right now, I think I kinda wanna go fighting. You can go Enrage, which is more like a bunch of creatures that have Enrage that still work with fighting as well, but, it doesn't allow, like, little creatures to survive, and you can't pick what's dying. It's you kinda have a smaller creature base. They all need to be able to survive 1 or 2 damage, stuff like that. Um, or you can go for mass amounts of damage to your opponents, something like Heartless Hadzuku, which is in this pile here. Um, and so if everybody's lost 20 life, this comes down and is a 63, 61. It's, fucking huge. Um, and so we that could be a fun way to go about it too. And so I know what I'm doing at this point. I got about 200 cards here. I want to go kind of fast. Finally, a Jund deck. Renshai, I have done at least two in the last year and a half. So is the goal 69 likes or 420? For the Raptor and anything dinosaurs, I would say probably 420. But both of them are greedy in my regard. Um, Star of Extinction might be good. Add that, and that's what I was kind of talking about a little bit before. It depends on which route I want to go with it, but I should say if you like this commander or where this end up going, share, like, and subscribe to the Commander Smiths. That would be greatly helpful. So Star of Extinction is an option, not in the pile at this point, but like Blasphemous Act is. I got a bit of a cough still, but I'll try and turn away from the mic when that's happening. So I would say it depends on which route this deck goes, and you'll kinda I have like Enrage-ish creatures. Something like Brood Hatch Nantuko gets to create a bunch of 1/1 insects for as much damage as that's dealt to it, right? So this isn't gonna go really well in a Pyromancer or Pyrohemia deck because 'cause you're just wiping the board, dealing 1 damage to everything, just kills really quick. Same thing with Druid's Call. Um, you got a couple of those. What else? Hornet Nest. Those 3 are huge. I would like to play them a bit. Um, but again, it doesn't really work with Pyrohemia, which is a nice way to control the board. But Star of Extinction, dealing 13 damage to any of these, creating 13 1/1s is a nice little get. Um, and so I don't know which way I want to go with this. So you're going to have to go on this little bit of a journey. Let's go with these token generators. This is what this is going to be. I might flip around as we talk a little bit, but Polyraptor, Enrage goes really well with Pyrohemia style cards. Um, because you're going to be able to just deal 1 damage to everything and then get whatever triggers that you're getting. And so this is whenever it's dealt damage, create a token. That's a copy of Polyraptor. So if you're able to deal 4 individual damages to it, you can get 4 a lot of Polyraptors because that copy makes a copy. So first one is 2, the next one is 4, the next one is 8, and so you can, like, get 16 off of 4 damage individually. Yes, Brash Taunter type of creature, Stuffy Doll. So I think you would lean into the Blasphemous Act style of deck that's gonna be happening, but that doesn't really work with Enrage as in, like, multiple triggers, but it there are plenty of cards that help in that regard. And now that we're talking about it, Renshai, I think that actually really hurts. I'd rather probably trigger Indoraptor as much as possible. So I should be thinking Pyrohemia, Pestilence, that type of thing, that kind of trigger to be able to trigger that and maybe the Enrage. And that ends up getting rid of Hornet Nest, Nantucko, and Druid's Call. So those are going to be my first three cuts. Oh, actually, Druid's Call can, well, I mean, those squirrels just kind of die real quick. But these two would die and then they don't trigger a lot. If I can get Druid's Call on a big creature, which is very easily manageable, I can get some squirrels out of the way. So we'll cut these two right off the bat, sadly. But we'll keep Druid's Call to create some squirrels. Polyraptor's nice. Fall of Care Andros is another one that you might like. Renshai, but whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, amass Orcs X, where X is the excess damage. So if you Starve Extinction, Blasphemous Act, and there's 10 creatures out, and you get excess damage of, 4 on each of them, you just got a 40/40 Orc. That's pretty huge. That last part is probably unlikely to happen so I wouldn't count on paying 8 to deal 7 damage to a creature. But I like the idea of that if we go Blasphemous Act. I did not put a ton of that in here. Also, I would want to say that I like the route you're wanting to go as well. So you're talking about the fighting. Fighting isn't bad because that is non-combat damage along with creating excess damage and hitting the Enrage. The big problem that I learned building Zangief is that you got to pack that deck full of fight cards. And the problem with that is if you don't have it, then it's and they generally don't draw anything. You got to figure out some way to generate kind of more advantage, I guess. Um, they just kind of run out. But fight cards should almost always be good, even if people are targeting Indoraptor along with other Enrage trigger cards out there. So that's not a bad deal. So Fall of Care Andros is pretty cool. Let's talk about Druid's Call. It's an aura, and then whenever that creature is dealt damage, you get to create that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. And that's a pretty sweet card. And the last one I want to talk about token generators: Spore Web Weaver, Reach, Hexproof from blue, 1/4. That's only 3 mana. It's going to survive a bunch of Pyrohemia, but whenever it's dealt damage, it's basically Enrage, gain a life, and create a 1/1 sapling. Again, 1/1s are rough to keep around, I think, in this. But if I lean into the fighting and Pyrohemia, then that's fine. If I go for the big board wipes and keep a couple of indestructibles around, which is also kind of in this, we'll see. So at this point, I'm happy with Pyroraptor and Fall of Care Andros, and then Spore Weaver is on the brink, I guess, already. But 3 mana, 1/4 is not bad in this deck at all. Let's go with. We got a couple of excess damage here as well. So I don't. If we end up going with like the Heartless Hazuku route, where I constantly want to get Indoraptor just huge, I think this is where we go. Like Civil Unrest gives Riot. They have for non-tokens, and then if a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. One thought that I've also had about Indoraptor, basically, if you make it like a huge creature, your opponents aren't making a choice. They're just always going to be sacrificing a creature, non-token creature, but still, I'd rather have them try and make that choice. Kind of like, um, oh, why am I blanking? The red black god that makes you either lose 2 life or sacrifice a creature. I love that effect because it's making them kind of agonize over the choice. Generally, it's like take 2, take 2, take 2, take 2. And then at the end of the game, they're like, oh shit, I don't want to take 2 anymore, but there's only so many creatures I can sacrifice or whatever. If you just make this guy big, it's just going to be, I'm going to sacrifice my creature. Mogus, thank you. And so I kind of wanna go for that route too, to whereas, like, if I don't wanna just be aiming to make him huge, even though I think you can easily do that. Um, so I think I'm going to get rid of something like Uncivil Unrest because that reduces the decision tree, and all will be one. This one's a little bit different because it's whenever you put counters on something. So Indoraptor would deal, if I go, it just deal that kind of damage for as many counters are put on Indoraptor. And then there is slightly like a lot of +1/+1 counter mid themes. I pulled this Shalai and Halar. Right now, this deck is like a mixture of like Shalai and Halar, Zangief, a bit of Rowan, a bit of Savine. It's kind of just a nice mixture right now, and I don't know where it's gonna go. So I think I'm gonna cut all will be one just because it's also just dealing direct damage, and I don't think that's what I want to be doing here. Teralf, God of Fury, 5/4 trample. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Teralf deals damage equal to excess to target other than that permanent. So again, this goes great in that Star of Extinction style deck. I don't think that's what I'm going to really do because I think that ends the game as well right here. Toralf is fantastic when you're in that style of deck. You can accidentally go infinite with all will be one, and that's not your style. I didn't realize that you can just go infinite pretty easy, but it does feel like come down, kill somebody with Indoraptor. And I don't necessarily want to do that. Toralf, very same feeling. So I don't think I'm gonna be going that route either. Solfim, Mayhem, Dominus. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. And then you can pay that cost, discard 2 cards, put an indestructible counter on it. This one I still might keep because, well, if we're doubling, it still works really nicely with my Pyrohemia stuff. I think I'm gonna be leaning into Pyrohemia and have fighting as probably so it works really nice with the fight cards. It works really nice with Pyrohemia because it affects opponent's creatures a lot quicker than my own. Red Squirrel, if you have enough dinosaurs, Forerunner of the Empire could be fun. I do have that in here in this pile, but that's the only one that for non-combat stuff, I think it just doesn't go over the top nearly as much. Let's go for that one. This is, well, removal. Let's go with removal. It is a big package. Thank you very much. And so this should help me. Let's just focus on I'm gonna go with fight and like Pyrohemia route, and anything really big going over the top, I'm just gonna end up cutting. So like we'll see. Okay, Exocrine is basically a creature that sorry, that earthquakes, and so I can put a ton of mana into it. I think this is it's nice because it deals damage to creatures and opponents. But I think I think what I want to do with Indoraptor is have something cost me 2 to 3 mana, deal a bunch of damage to opponents, and then cast Indoraptor so he's like in that 8 to 12 range. Like, well, so the question ends up being are people aren't just going to take 8 to 12, right? But that's a reasonable number. Like people aren't we'll see. That's my thought at this point. But basically, if I'm exocrining, I'm going all out. I'm not going to be able to cast Indoraptor. Reverse wise, if Indoraptor's out, I'm only going to, do X amount and make sure Indoraptor survives. It only gets one trigger. So I think at this point we will cut that. Blasphemous Act, same thing. I think we just end up cutting it because it's only one trigger. And hopefully we can control the board in different ways. Um, Forerunner of the Empires is in here, but Silverclad Ferocidon, Enrage, whenever it's dealt damage, each opponent sacrifices a permanent. I like that. We'll see what it is, but it's 7 mana, it's high up there, we'll keep that. Earthquake, like I said earlier with Exocrine, we'll probably get rid of that. It's not a bad deal, especially if you go into the Brash Taunter style cards, but I think we're gonna go away from it at this point just because I want to play the Pyrohemia game, so I think we'll go away from that. Immortal Sun can be added if you're not using walkers and just feels right to me. Oh, because of the Ixalan, connection there? I'll get to the Chandra one next, and we can talk about it a little bit. But, we'll stick with removal. Apex Altasaur comes down, it fights, it's a dinosaur, it's kinda doing a lot, and so it's a kind of a fat dinosaur at this point. We got 3 fat dinosaurs, but we'll keep with that. Pestilence Demon, it's 1 black, 1 damage to each creature and each player. Not a bad deal. It's a big fighter too, big creature. We'll stick with that. I like Chandra's Incinerator as well because we're gonna have some at least some cards that are dealing damage to your opponents, which should turn into removal and reduce his cost. So, right now, I really like that card in here. Gargos, Vicious Watcher, 6 mana, 8/7 Vigilance. Hydra spell doesn't matter, but whenever a creature you control becomes a target of a spell, Gargos fights. So it's a fighting. Um, it's kind of nice. It doesn't have to just be my cards. It can be other people's removal as well, singularly. Now, the problem ends up there's a couple of cards here that if I don't have enough fight cards in there, they just become easy cuts later on in the game. But that's where we're going at this point. So I don't play with a lot of red, so I'm drawing blanks on what would work well. Oh, does Chandra really do enough? That which one are we seeing? This one and that one? They're both Chandras. I actually like Chandra Torch of Defiance probably better than Chandra Awaken Inferno. Let's talk about it just real quick since you brought it up. Both of them. Chandra Awaken Inferno is really cool because it's the +1 or the +2. It's just dealing 1 damage to each opponent. And then that is at the beginning of your oh, it's their upkeep. Okay. Chandra, Awake Inferno, cut already. I was thinking your, mine, my upkeep. Then it deals the damage. Then Indoraptor likes coming into play. But that is not the case. So it is an easy cut. And then let's talk about Chandra Torch of Defiance. Number 1, 4 mana, really nice. But you get to exile the top card of your library. If you don't cast it, 2 damage to each opponent, which is 6 counters on Indoraptor if you don't play it. That's not a bad deal. And then it also adds the mana, also adds the damage, which is the excess damage potentially, what is kind of going on, and then whatever. But those first 2 are the most important, and I'm not a bad deal. Like when it can become 2 damage or a little bit of draw or a little bit of ramp. The 4 mana is the stickler, but we'll see. I like that a lot more. Uh, the 6 mana one felt too slow. Yeah. So, yeah, I think the 6th one, it just doesn't work the way I was thinking it was anyway, so we can get rid of that. Alright, Hammerfist Giant, it taps to deal 4 damage to each creature with flying and each player. So it's nice because it can set off Enrage. It does kill itself unless you got something else going on there. 6 mana is a little bit slow, so I think we end up cutting that. I don't think we need to do that. Magmasaur comes into play with 1/1 counters on it. Like I said, there is a slight 1/1 counter theme going on, so we'll see if that sticks around too. But during your upkeep, remove a 1/1 counter from Magmasaur or sacrifice it and deals 1 damage for each 1/1 counter on it to each creature without flying and each player. So creatures flying, hitting, enrage triggers, and it'd be nice for like Druid's Call or those little 1/1 dinky things. But I think it's too expensive and doing too much, which is weird to say. So I think we end up cutting that. Strax, Santorin Nurse, 5 mana, 5/5, trample, vigilance. You can tap it, sacrifice an artifact, choose a player at random. When you do, Strax fights, and then whenever it deals damage, put a 1/1 counter on it. Um, I think I think and I'll have to think about, like, apply this to Gargos later on too a little bit, but Strax, I'd prefer to be able to have an Enrage creature fighting, not just random fighting, and so I think Strax gets cut. Vanablast just for that great, sweet, sweet artifact removal. Subterranean Spirit, 3/3 pro red, so it's gonna survive a lot of the red removal you got in your own deck, but it taps to deal 1 damage to each creature without flying. It'd be nice if it hit players as well, but it doesn't. I think at 5 mana, it might be a little rough, so I think we cut that right now. Chandra's Ignition, I mean, put that on Indoraptor, is gonna be bonkers. Is it gonna force me? Okay. Choose an opponent at random. Okay. Alright, so it doesn't necessarily matter. It has to have the damage dealt to it, but still, you got kind of an Enrage deck going on. Chandra's Ignition still works for me in that. No neck nurse. Yeah. Alright. Vorinclex, 5 mana, ETBs, goes and gets 2 forests, reveal them, put it in your hand. I hate that part. And then 8 mana to exile it. I wish this card was awesome. It's not. I don't think it is. Mill 10 cards, distribute counters, like I said, and then you can pay 1. This creature fights target creature. So you can pay it a couple times, fight, fight, fight. I think we get rid of it. Zangief, I do want to have this in here. And so must be blocked if able. If it's your turn, it's indestructible. And whenever he does excess damage, not just combat damage, but so the fighting works with it, and they got to sacrifice a non-creature, non-land card. So it's kind of a similar thing to Indoraptor. And like I said, it's a similar feel, I think, mix at least with Zangief. Fiery Confluence can deal 1 damage individually 3 times, or some artifact removal, or even 2 damage to each opponent. So again, it works really nice on a bunch of different levels, as in like being able to deal damage. Now the question is 7 damage or 7 mana for the 6 damage later on in the game worth it? I've probably already played it once or twice, and so it's unlikely that the hitting the opponents is gonna do anything, but it's still nice to be able to have a couple triggers for the, Enrage, and artifact removal is always nice. Forerunner of the Empire. So ETBs goes gets a dinosaur on top, and then whenever you cast or have a dino enter, it deals 1 damage to each creature. This one's great. I think it's perfect in this deck. I think I'm gonna have a handful of dinosaurs. Maybe not enough to make it dinosaur tribal, but there's gonna be enough to go and grab. Conductor of Cacophony, 4 mana, 2/1. Comes in with 2/1/1 counters on it, and you can pay a black, remove a 1/1 counter, and it deals 1 damage to each other creature and each player. So hits your own. That's the other thing that you want to be looking out for, is making sure that that damage is hitting yourself, because there's a handful of cards that don't hit your creatures. So I like this one in here. 4 mana, real cheap. Pyrahemia, All Star. Um, We got enchantment, pay 1 red, deals 1 damage to each creature and each player, and then also if there's no creatures, sacrifice it. You're not really looking to remove the entire board, but still, it does nice work. I have a couple of other cards that I want to talk about there. Let's go there. All right, Pestilence, same thing, just in black. I like it. I love it. I want more of it. Last Laugh, similar, but whenever a permanent other than Last Laugh is put into a graveyard from play, it deals 1 damage to each creature and each player, and then if there's no creatures in play, sacrifice it. So this is less controlled by the amount of mana you have, and it kind of, whenever it comes down, just one thing goes into play, kills a couple of 1/1s, which triggers. I think it just kind of keeps going off. A little bit like Massacre Girl. Um, but the damage is nice, it all stacks. And if you can give Indoraptor indestructible, I think you're doing just fine. Also the Indoraptor triggers with it because they gotta sacrifice a non-token creature. So it's just gonna keep on going off, pretty sure. Crypt Rats, you can pay X black mana and spend and then just deal that much damage. More than likely, you might just get one off. That's the tough one, but I like the creatures, and so we'll see how that goes. Withering Wisps, a slight snow theme. And I think we'll see how many fight cards actually make it to make it snow covered. But Withering Wisps, it's a black. It's basically a Pestilence for 3 instead of 4, but it has to be snow mana. That's about it for black. Gimli's Reckless Might. Creatures you control have haste, and whenever you attack, if a creature you control has total power 8 or more. Nope. If creatures you control have total power 8 or more, target attacking creature you control fights up to one target creature you don't control. So it's an on-field fight that gives haste. I like it. Indoraptor is going to be able to hit that pretty easy. Did you just say Jun Stacks? I didn't. I don't think so. Am I? Is this Jun Stacks? Is this what I'm doing? I hope not. Plague Spitter. At the beginning of your upkeep, 1 damage to each creature and each player. When it dies, 1 damage to each creature and each player. So just another little thing that'll have a couple of stacks on there. We'll see if that makes it. Cartouche of Strength. ETBs, that creature fights. It's an aura. And then 1/1 trample. It's nice to give Indoraptor a little boost, a little trample. And then the straight fighting was good. Lure. That's a beta one. BT dubs. But makes everybody block it if you attack. I don't think it's nice on a couple of cards in here, but it's not going to be worth keeping. So we'll cut that. Colony Ambush, 3 mana instant fight, and then it has that flip card ETB as a land tapped. Savage Stomp. Costs 2 less if you're targeting a dinosaur, which you are hopefully, puts a 1/1 counter on it, and you fight a creature. So it works in here. Goblin Sharpshooter. This is just 1 damage. I think I was thinking I was going to use more Death Touch potentially, but I think this just gets cut off the bat. All right, Domri, Monarch of Bolas. You're not doing anything near a stack. I didn't think so. I did not think so. Domri, it's creatures get +1/+0, so it gives a little boost to Indo, and then a little bit of ramp, can't be countered, and it has that fight attached to it. So it does a lot of work in here. Gimli, Mournful Avenger. Has indestructible as long as 2 or more creatures died under your control this turn. So it can be at least surviving some of my damage effects. And then whenever another creature you control dies, put a 1/1 counter on it. And whenever this ability resolves for the 3rd time this turn, he fights. Again, like I was saying, I'm pretty sure I want to control who's fighting and have the Enrage triggers fighting more. I'd like Gimli around, but I don't think that's going to help. Auntie Blight, Bad Influence. 2/2 flyer. Whenever a source you control deals damage to you control damage to you, put that many 1/1 counters on Auntie, and then you can remove counters to deal X damage to any target. Not a bad deal. It can get pretty big, I'm sure. Caltrops, 3 mana artifact. Whenever a creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to it. Sets your Enrage stuff going on, kind of stops some smaller creatures from attacking. Ancient Animist, it's a fight card, instant, putting a 1/1 counter on creature of its legend. Perfect. Ashling the Pilgrim. This is one of those where it's pretty mana intensive, but you're putting counters on it. And if you do it 3 times, you remove all the counters and deal that much damage to all the creatures. That's a big one, not a little one. So I think we want to get rid of it. All right. Pounce is just an instant speed fight. Prize Fight is instant speed fight that gets me a treasure. Inscriptions of Abundance, instant speed. It fights, counters, gaining life if you're kicking it. So we'll do that. Fall of Gil-galad, 2 mana. Scry 2, 2/1/1 counters until end of turn. Target creature you control gains. When this creature dies, draw 2 cards. Then that creature fights up to 1 other target creature. So it's allowing me to fight, potentially draw, counters, scrying. For 2 mana, it does a lot. Titanic Brawl is really a 1 mana fight card if it has 1/1 counter on it. Plenty of cards in here potentially with 1/1 counters. Grape Shot. This is just kind of an Enrage thing, I'm thinking. So cast a couple spells potentially in a turn, and then able to choose my Enrage triggers. I think it's probably a little cute, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Goblin Bombardment is a sacrifice outlet. If I was gonna be making a bunch of little 1/1s, I am not, so we will get rid of it. Cast into the fire, you can divide 1 damage. It is instant speed or 2 damage one way. So you can 1/1 to something, 1/1 to enrage or split it up, or just exile target artifact. We'll see. It's simple, sweet. Instant speed, pit fight, fighting. Orcish Bowmasters. Sadly, I think we got to cut it because it is only 1 damage. Can't fight with it. Not going to survive a pestilence. Um, I understand that it's crazy good, but it's just not for this deck. Um, Livewire Lash. Whenever you target the creature that it's equipped to, you get to deal 2 damage to any target. It is a fantastic card in something like Feather. And we'll just end up seeing how many fight cards make it into the deck. Ulvenwald Tracker taps target creature you control fights. Mutant's Prey, fighting at 1 mana instant if you have 1/1 counter on stuff, which we're going to. Primal Might, fighting for 1 mana. X gives the +1 X+X. Blizzard Brawl is 1 mana fight and then gets indestructible if you have enough snow permanents. So that's another incentive to play snow. So we got 2 at this point. Prey Upon, 1 mana fight. Bushwhack, 1 mana fight, or go get a basic land. Tail Swipe, instant speed, 1 mana fight. Reckless Rage, 1 mana instant, 4 damage to an opponent's creature, 2 damage to probably Indoraptor, but an Enrage trigger, not bad. And Soul Scar Mage. So if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, it gets -1/-1 counters put on it. That is a nice deal. There is maybe negative, -1/-1 counter deck in here, but I'm not building that. But I still like the idea of like slowly getting rid of their big creatures if I can't kill it with Pyrohemia and stuff. And it gets bigger with my fight triggers. So right now it'll stick around. All right. I'm attempting to use Bowmasters in a Shirai deck. It will probably end up staying in the yard though. Oh, Shirai is the one whenever you have like 1 power or toughness die, it comes back into your hand. That'd be pretty good in there. I All right. Let's see here. Another random aside. Since I'm going fight, this is going to end up working in here. Soul Collector, 5 mana. Whenever a creature dealt damage, not just, so I'm going to be able to fight with it. Whenever it dies, you get to take that creature under your control. Um, I kind of like the idea of that, and that works. Oh, not there, but Dread Slaver doing the same thing. 3/5. You fight with it or you block with it, kill a creature, you get to steal it. Another snow permanent, but if a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, exile that card. You can cast it with snow land, basically. Draugr, Necromancer, and then Sword of Once and Future. +2/+2, pro blue and black, and then basically recasting Surveil 2, recasting fight cards from the yard for free. All right. Bunch of little ones. Let's look at counters at this point, which I think we're half-assed, maybe not doing, but Urban Daggertooth, 4 mana, 4/3, Enrage. You get to proliferate. So that's really nice with them counters as Vigilance. That works in here so far. um Wandering Throne to double your Enrage triggers. You know what? I haven't picked up Wandering Throne yet, but I agree. I think that would be a great get in here, especially if I have enough dinosaurs. I haven't bought it yet, and um, and, content creation is what it is. Most people already got their shit done. So, what do we got? Oh, the token gets counters on Bowmasters, right? It will work. Counters on Bowmasters? How would you get the counters on there? Yeah, Wandering Throne is super good, Renshai. I agree. No, because the counters go on an orc. It's like the army orc, so it doesn't go on there. Branching evolution doubles the amount of 1/1 counters being put onto something. I already talked about wanting Indoraptor not huge, so I'm probably gonna cut this right now. But if you want a huge Indoraptor, you put that in there. Still haven't even gotten anything from the last 2 sets except the precons. Yeah. I mean, I have a store that I really like going to. If anybody's in Minnesota, Cedar Cliff Collectibles is kind of the store that I go to a lot. I really enjoy that place. Um, and then Card Sphere is where I get a ton of cards from too. So they do a great job. Hydra's growth doubles the amount of 1/1 counters on it during the upkeep. We're gonna skip on that, I think, too. Varol's the Scar Stripes, giving creatures in your graveyard scavenge. I think we're gonna stick away from that as well. Just it's nice, but Court of Garenbrig doubling the amount of 1/1 counters on stuff. I think we'll cut that as well. I think we're going to cut a lot of the support for 1/1 counters, obviously. Um, yeah, so there's putting more 1/1 counters on stuff. We don't need that. Hardened Scales might be able to stick around. Maybe we keep Ozolith, the Shattered Spire, and Hardened Scales, just because that's a one-off, and there might be enough cards in here that get 1/1 counters put on them. But the doubling part is probably too much for Indoraptor for what I want to be doing. Oh, right. The constant product dump. I am seriously looking to feel bad, at least. Like I'm doing a lot too much. Don't want the amass maker getting bigger. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that works really well in Shry like you're wanting with the Bowmaster. All right, this is creature pumps. So where do we want this stuff to go? Xenagos is going to double the power and toughness. Um, People are going to have to block it, and then I think the menace creates 2 sources of enrage, so 2 creatures blocking, yada yada. But I think we're going to get rid of Xenagos at this point. That's not what I want to do. But Haunted Cloak is maybe awesome here. So equipped creature has vigilance, trample, and haste. Don't necessarily care about the haste, but the vigilance and trample is really nice. Vigilance allows you to block, and so you're potentially getting more enrage triggers. I like that. Um, the life link on Indoraptor is potentially really nice if they don't want to sacrifice those permanents. So that one, ugh. Basilisk Collar is that life link as well. So I like that. Vampiric Link. I think we probably just want we don't need a ton of life well, we don't need a ton of life link. So let's go Vampiric Link. We can always go back to it if we're like, "Oh, we really like all of this life link." Rancor is really cheap and giving Indoraptor a bigger power along with the trample. We'll keep that around. Hero's Blade, free pump of +3/+2 for legends when he equips. And I already talked about not wanting to make him too big, so making him like a 6/3 with no bloodthirst um isn't necessarily something that I want. So let's cut that for now. Poet's Quill is another lifelink ability in black equipment. I like it. And Talania's Crown, when it ETBs 1 damage to it, and then +3/+0 and trample. Um I still kind of like that. Just that little enrage trigger can be really nice everywhere, anywhere. Um, let's go with these smaller packages over here. Now that we've talked things through a little bit. All right, here are some enrage triggers that we were talking about. Vrondis enrage creates a 5/4. Whenever those 5/4s uh, deal damage, you got to sacrifice it. And so it's making a 5/4 is not a bad deal though. So I think we're gonna stick Vrondrus around. Stuffy Doll, on the other hand, is gonna end up having to go along with Brash Taunter, um, because they'd work better in the Blasphemous Act style deck, and that is not what we're doing at this point. So, bada bing. Wrathful Raptors. Whenever a dinosaur you control is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target that isn't a dinosaur. This would be nice in that Blasphemous Act deck. It is a dinosaur, so I'm going to keep it around a little bit longer to keep it. And then we got Fiend Lash and Equipment, +2/+0 and Reach. And then whenever equipped creature is dealt damage, it deals damage equal to its power to target player or planeswalker. So it only has to be dealt 1 damage to deal the power. And that I like a lot more. Um, Raptor's gonna need lots of protection. It only has 1 toughness. No, no, no. It does not have just 1 toughness because that bloodthirst comes into play. And so uh, so it enters the battlefield with the 1/1 counters. Sometimes there is when it comes into play, add these counters, and then sometimes, which this is, comes in with those counters. And so there isn't a reaction time of like, "Oh, I'm gonna deal 1 damage to it to kill it before the counters get put on there," as like a trigger. This is it comes into play with those counters. So more than likely, this is gonna end up having 4 plus toughness, in my opinion. So, uh, the average, that's we'll I think about get to that. Let's do that right now. I'm aiming for roughly 6. I think I was thinking 8 to 12, and that's still, I think, potentially there. But I don't wanna get it that big because I want them to create those decisions. So, Heartless Hitsuku, you know, deals damage equal to half everybody's life. That'd be a lot of Bloodthirst trigger. Let's skip on that this time. Blanca, Ferocious Friend, deals, 2 damage whenever it's targeted. It gets +2/+2. It has haste and can gain trample. But basically, you fight this, it deals 2 damage. It's kind of that nice thing to everybody. So when you're dealing 2 damage to everybody, you're putting 6 counters on Indoraptor with that Enrage or Bloodthirst. I just 2 damage is going to do a lot of work. You just gotta make it sure that it's cheap enough. This is gonna end up being a card that depends on how many, fight cards, fight sorceries end up in it. Court of Emberearth, um, at the you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, get a 3/1 knight, and then you get and then if you are still the monarch, it deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of creatures you control. This is gonna be roughly creature heavy. So we will see. This might be too much damage, but it's probably I like being able to add the monarch, so that works for me. Acidic Soil, dealing 1 damage to each player for each land he or she controls, includes you, but that Bloodthirst is gonna get real huge. Basically, you're thinking at least turn 6. I don't know if I necessarily want that. That's why I'm thinking 5, like 2 mana, that ability. So right now, we'll cut Acidic Soil. Tunneling Geopede, landfall, 1 damage to each opponent. So that right there is 3 +1/+1 counters on Indoraptor. How many casts a game is the limit, do you think? You play a group with the probably remove it at least twice a game, right? Well, one of the ways that we play is that we try and make sure that we have enough protection as well. And so my protection package is decently big at this point. We gotta cut it down, but, um, hopefully, the hope is to get indestructible on it or some type of protection. Tunneling GOP, just dealing 1 damage to everything. If I got a fetch, that's 6 damage for that, and that's totally doable. You know what I mean? I like that in here. Witty Roastmaster is going to get that, oh, I don't actually know how that stacks now that I'm thinking about it. This comes into play with the counters on it for the damage that you've done. This is dealing 1 damage to each opponent for whenever the creature comes into play. So I would say that doesn't count because the counters need to come into play with it. If this is already in play, you can't do that. All right, so Witty Roastmaster gets cut along with Impact Tremors. Those were in there for that reason. I thought it'd be really nice to get, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way. So um spend counters as ammo against opponents. You can always cannibalize your commander. I think it's a red card, maybe a goblin. Oh, I am unsure. Okay, so you're saying like take like a counter from one of your creatures to deal damage to an opponent? Thinking a little bit about more like the removal of the commander, I would say that yeah, twice is probably reasonable. The 1/1 counters, yes. So it takes I know of cards that you can remove 1/1 counters from themselves. Only a couple of those. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I know what you're talking about, Mr. Parks. If you find it, post in the chat, okay? Tarka's command. This is what I'm talking about. I like probably being in the 2 mana range and then being able to cast Indoraptor with at 5 mana, like total. And so it deals 3 damage to each opponent. That'd be 3, 6, 9 plus Indoraptor. 9 counters on Indoraptor on turn 5 seems fairly good. But also put a land into play, 1/1 gain reach on everything. It's really there for the damage and potentially putting land or something else in there. Creeping Bloodsucker, 1 damage to each opponent, gain life. So it's a little bit of life gain, definitely doing some damage. Not a bad deal. Limb Duels Hex. I'm probably just gonna cut this. And it's old ass card, right? Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's red. I rarely play red outside of our Edgar and Queen Marchesa. Gotcha. No worries. I'll have to think about it and maybe search it up on Scryfall a little bit. Limb Duels Hex, 1 damage to each player. You can pay a black or 3 mana to stop that, but it's really cheap, dealing 1 damage to everybody and allows you to play Indoraptor with some counters coming into play. Might still make it. I like the idea of it. Flame Rift, 4 damage to each player. So that's 4, 8, 12 counters on Indoraptor when it comes into play. Whoops. You have Thermo Alchemist, which taps to deal 1 damage to each player, untaps whenever you cast an instant of sorcery, and then it's an 0/3, so it can survive a little bit of that stuff. Price of Progress is 2 damage to each player for each non-basic land that they control. I would assume at least 2 damage to each opponent, which again is 6 counters on Indoraptor. Spear Sewer, Sower, Spewer, Spear, Spear, taps to deal 1 damage to each player. And so I don't think that's a bad deal. That's at least 3 counters, and then you're probably building up on some other things. Kessig Flame Breather, 1 damage to each opponent whenever you cast a non-creature spell. 2 mana, it's a 1/3. Nice little blocker. I like it. Rakdos Charm, 2 mana, and then it deals 1 damage to each player for each creature they control, including yourself, but that can be potentially a lot of counters on Indoraptor. All right. We're through halfway, but we're making some good cuts at this point. I ain't mad about it. All right, Rakdos Charm. Da-da-da. I think I might have to think like these cheap creatures that come into play. They might just be better as spells and leaning on Indoraptor to be a beast. I like Creeping Bloodsucker still. And I like Tunneling GOP, but maybe those 3. Flame Breather, Spewer, Alchemist. Maybe we cut those. Court of Embreth, Blanca, Fiendlash, Wrathful Raptors. I think that ends up being a better card. It's more like a stuffy doll, which is unfortunate. Because I bought this card for this deck. We'll cut Wrathful Raptors. I think I regret that, but it's not this deck, I don't think. Vondrus is still in here, I like it. Talania's Crown, Poet Quill. Question ends up being is, like, how many times people are gonna take that damage, where, like, gaining the life is gonna be nice, and if I just got rid of the creatures that deal 1 damage, not gonna do that much. Alright, Rancor, Basilisk Caller, Spear, Haunted Cloak, Ozolith, Hard Scales, Urban, Sword, Draugr, Dread Slaver, Soul Collector. Yeah, yes. I can do all of this so far. I don't the fighting cards probably aren't gonna go anywhere tonight, and they'll have to be whittled down as we're going about it. I think we can get rid of Cast of the Fire. We're relying on fight cards to deal the damage. Time to fight, 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 fight. Caltrops is kind of a cool idea. And then right now we're talking about plenty of cards that deal damage to ourselves. Um, Domri, fight, fight, fight. 1 damage to everything. Fight, damage. Crypt Rats probably goes. Maybe we can cut Crypt Rats. I really like the idea of it, especially, but it's an X thing. So if you just pay 1 black, it's gonna kill itself, but you can put a bunch of black into it. Um, but that's not what we're doing. So we can cut Crypt Rats. Last left might just be a kill everything card and keep indestructible around maybe. Brennan 6 keeps popping up in my head. Do you have a plan enough spells? Need land tutors. You know what? I have Renin 6, I believe, in here somewhere. Just haven't gotten to it yet. Pestilence, Pyrohemia. Let's It's probably in the land base, so that we can do that next. Forerunner, Fiery Confluence. Yeah, I think Fiery is gonna be pretty nice in here. Zangief, Chandra's Ignition, that's gonna hit a bunch of Enrage stuff, but I don't think I'm gonna like it. Unless you just make Indoraptor huge. That could be a thing. Vandalblast, Chandra, I'm still liking. Gargaros, Chandra's Incinerator. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent. Okay, so the question ends up being how much of that is happening. I mean, we got a handful of things. We got, but it's not a lot. We'll keep it around for now. Demon, Altasaur, Ferocidon, Soulfim for now. Spore Web, Druid's Call, Polyraptor. Okay. So whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, which is not what we're doing right now. So Fall of Care Andros does not work in here, sadly. Let me get some water here. Let's see here. All right, let's try and find that Renin 6. All right, Great Henge. It's going to go great in here. Augur of Autumn, being able to play lands off the top and potentially creatures later on. We're going to want to be heavy on cutting creatures. I think in the ramp package, I think we want to lean more on like enchantments and sorceries and stuff like that. So let's cut Augur. Reaver Cleaver is going to be really nice. You got plenty of big not dragons, dinosaurs that hopefully can get you there. Naheb the Internal should get you a lot of red after that combat step, and you're kind of dealing a lot of damage. I hope we can do that. Traverse the Outlands might be competing with kind of the bigger creatures, but I think we have enough bigger creatures instead of that mid game that I think we can probably, turn 5 or 5 mana, Indoraptor, and then the next turn traverse the outlands, kind of take a turn off a little bit, and then put 8, 10 basic lands into play, and basically just win the game after that. Traverse the Outlands is a crazy ass card. Rakdos, Lord of Riots, 2 black, 2 red, 6/6 flying trample. Can't cast it unless an opponent lost life this turn, and then creature spells cost 1 less per cat or for each life an opponent has lost this turn. So instead of putting counters on it, it's reducing the mana that creatures cost, which is not bad for those dinosaurs. Cacophodon. I want to keep this in here, but this is kind of an infinite go. But when it Enrage, you get to untap target permanent. Let's talk about it. We've talked about Pestilence a lot. So if I can get this indestructible and I have the most life, I can pay 1 black, 1 damage to each creature and each player. This is dealt the damage, even though it's indestructible. Untap a black, do it again, over. This will always stay in play. Pestilence will stay in play. And if you have the most life, you can just kill the board on that in that regard. But has to be indestructible. You got to have all 3 cards in the play. I doubt I'm not really going to tutor for that. I have the Forerunner card, which is very on theme. Um, but I see it being pretty unlikely that would happen. As a big ass at 5. I like what's going on. Bear Umbra, just being aggressive. It's a protective spell, untaps your lands. I think we can cut that. Raging Raptors, 2/3, Enrage, go get a basic land, put it into play tapped. Not a bad deal in here. Descent into Avernus at the beginning of your upkeep. That's the big ticket here, is that you want your upkeep dealing the damage. That's when the triggers have to happen, not on players, everybody's. So dealing damage to everybody, they all get treasures. So it ramps you, it gets you damage for Indoraptor. It's going to be a great card in here. Clythos. If you remove a land, you get a red or black or red or green, and if not, 2 damage to each opponent. Again, 2/4/6. Oh, if it's non-creature. But Cacophodon, never even heard of it. We can go back and look at it again. All right. Cacophodon. So 4 mana, 2/5. Whenever it's dealt damage, untap target permanent. So not a bad deal to just untap a land to have what you have going on in your deck. It's a pretty cool card. So Enrage is a neato mechanic. Clythos should be doing some good stuff in here. Shadow in the Warp. 3 mana enchantment. First creature spell costs 2 less, which is a nice little reduction. And then whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, deals 2 damage to that player. It's here for the cost reduction. I don't know how relevant, like it's not going to help Indoraptor get bigger. It's nice to kind of ping people as they play their spells though. Gadrak, you can't attack unless you have 4 or more artifacts, but at the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. It has to be non-token, which kind of works with Indoraptor, but also giving a treasure. It's a cheap, nice blocker. 5/4. Dragon is just a dinosaur with wings, right? That's Oh, you want me to go over the infinite part with it? So protection bits. So Cacophodon untapping a permanent. Let's go with the damage enablers. So Pestilence or Pyrohemia or Withering Wisps, which is pay a red or a black or a swamp black to deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. Pings that if he's indestructible, and indestructible can happen with like attacking with Stonehoof Chieftain, Eldrazi Monument, have some equipment that gives it indestructible, hammer, mithril coat. We got Gift of Doom that can give indestructible, and it just has to be for 1 turn. So Inspiring Call, Tyrant Guard, any of these instants potentially. So there are cards that are able to give it, like it could happen if Cacophodon is down, and if it happens once, it gets taken out basically. But I'm okay with that. Like I don't think it's going to happen, and I'm okay with that. Um I was thinking there's gonna be more of a 1/1 counter thing going on, but I think that's not gonna happen nearly as much. So I think Rishkar can get cut. I think Kami of the Whispering Wool can go. Ren and 6, like you mentioned. So nice to deal 1 damage for that Enrage or just a little bit of removal, but also bringing a land back from the graveyard into hand. Um, I doubt I'll ever get to the uh, ugh, excuse me, the retrace bit, but still fine. 2 mana is what makes it cool. At this point, we'll keep it in. There we go. Boop. Incubation Druid. I think we're going away from that 1/1 counter thing, so I don't think that's gonna work here. Like I said, gonna lean more into the sorceries and enchantments, so Fertile Ground, Aura that gets me more mana, Farseek, 3 visits, Nature's Lore, all that get cards that get me land. Goblin, Anarchomancer. It is a 2/2 for 2, and red and green spells cost 1 less, but this is something that I will likely just cut. Like, I don't think it's necessary at this point. Braid of Fire can probably throw down a lot of Pyrohemia, but we're not working with a lot of instants. I don't think there's a lot of activated abilities. So I think it's just going to be a lost card in here. So we'll cut that. Tawera's Dockside Extortionist leaves around those treasures. So that we'll keep that. Thunderscape Familiar reduces the cost of green or red spells by 1. It would be a great card in here, but it's just gonna die right away. So we'll cut that. Might have to go blow my nose after this. Marauding Raptor reduces creature spells by 1, and then whenever they ETB for you, you're dealing 2 damage to it. So we do need likely, creatures that need to be able to survive that. So Marauding Raptor is pretty dope, and another dinosaur. Otepec Huntmaster. Dinosaur spells cost 1 less. Tap. Target dinosaur gains haste until end of turn. We'll see if this makes it. Probably not. Depends on how many dinosaurs end up in the deck. Uh, Gyre Sage. 1/2 evolve. So whenever a creature with bigger power comes into play, put a 1/1 counter on it. And then you can tap it, add a green mana for each 1/1 counter on it. We have a little bit of support there at this point. But I think there's going to be plenty of cards that get it bigger. So we'll see. Sakura Tri Builder doesn't need to stick around to get you mana. So I like that in here. Ordeal of Nylea is fantastic because goes Indoraptor, aura it up, attack, and then you go get 2 basic lands basically and put a 1/1 counter on Indo. That's nice. Druid of Cowl, 1/3 taps for a green. I think I need to. This ain't gonna be here. There's just better cards that do similar things, but it'll get you whatever color mana. Let's see if I can find that real quick. I don't know if I put it away yet or not. That's the question. Because I'm thinking that thing with Defender and Hexproof that taps for any color mana at 2. Let's see here. Do 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 do. Yeah. All right. So we'll cut that at this point. Drover of the Mighty. 2 mana. It'll likely get up to a 3/3. Taps for any color mana. Drover of the Mighty. We'll keep it for now. A Song of Freyalise. Turning your creatures into mana. We'll cut that for now. Zertod Druid. This is one I won off of Spooge Wizard from the Stump the Smith Savant. I appreciate it greatly, Mr. Wizard. Taps for a green, and then whenever it taps, you get to deal 1 damage to each opponent. If it didn't have that 1 damage to each opponent, we wouldn't keep it around, but that's a nice little bit there for dealing damage, so we'll keep that. Carpet of Flowers. This is a card I wish I would put in more decks, but also I don't trust people playing islands, even though people play islands. So, but it's gonna get cut. Curse of Opulence, great 1 drop, not a creature, so it shouldn't die. So let's keep that in there for now. Deathrite Shaman. It's at least 2 toughness, so keep it for now. Soul Ring, Ignoble Hierarch is gonna get cut, unfortunately. Uh, 1 toughness just is not gonna survive. Wild Growth, just nice little green bit, aura, and then Birds of Paradise will also get cut because it will not survive very quick. We can be a little bit slower, have those 2 mana creatures that, are 2 mana creatures that have a little bit of an ass so they can survive, something. Alright, some random ass creatures. Whenever it's dealt damage, if it survives, put a 1/1 counter on it. Um, Same thing with Protein Hydra. I think we cut these. It's kinda like Enrage, if it survives, put that many counters on it. So they get huge. The problem with creatures that just get huge is that they just get huge. They don't do anything to necessarily they don't have trample, I would just move on from that. Impervious Great Worm, I was thinking that Indestructible was gonna be important, but I think we're gonna wanna just give it to the entire deal or not worry about it. So, Deep Slumber Titan is something that I wanna try and fit in here, but it's just one of those it's just a big creature. 7/7 for 4 mana, it comes into play tapped. Whenever it's dealt damage, it gets to untap. It's gonna be perfect in here, it's a great fighter, um, but it's just a big guy. So, ugh. Ronus the Indomitable, it's a 5/5 death toucher, it's a great fighter, it's cheap, and it can give trample and a little bit of a boost there, so I like it. Alright, War Elemental, can only cast it if they've been dealt damage, and whenever you deal more damage to them, you put 1/1 counters on it. It's just a huge creature. This is one that we will cut, unfortunately. God, there are some really cool, just big creatures. All right, maybe we keep it. I haven't played with War Elemental in maybe ever. Chandra's Spitfire. Whenever an opponent is dealt non-combat damage, it gets +3/+0. So if you Pyrohemia for 1, that's 3/6/9. It's a 10/3 flyer. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Cryptborn Horror. This has ETBs with X11s, where X is the total life lost by opponents this turn. So it's basically a Bloodthirst X with Trample. Again, just a big guy. Unlikely to stick around. We can probably cut that one. I think we cut War Elemental as well. It doesn't have any um but man, I feel like we could get real aggressive with these, right? Like Cryptborn Horror. If somebody just straight up removes Indoraptor, next turn Cryptborn Horror, and you got like a 9/9 with Trample, or the next turn War Elemental. Cut, 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 cut them. We don't need them. Weathered Sentinel gets indestructible. Same thing with Darksteel Mirror. Darksteel Mirror it's not a good fighter, obviously. Um, and this can get +3/+3 and attack whoever attacked you. I think we can cut Darksteel and we can keep Weathered Sentinels at this point. Yikes. All right. Let's go with our draw at this point. So we have draw and protection left. We're at a buck 08. I've always got too many creatures to cut in my decks. Yeah, well, hopefully I'll probably do a count after this. And then we'll do like CMC route. But I do need to go and blow my nose too, unfortunately. So Decadent Dragon, it's nice because you get to kind of steal some opponent's creatures, or whenever it attacks, you get a treasure token, which is nice. Blood for the Blood God. Reduce the spell is reduced by 1 for each creature that died this turn, and then discard your hand, draw 8 cards, and deals 8 damage to each opponent. Um, and then you got to exile it. So it's pretty dope. You're kind of it just depends on how many creatures get out there. But I think it's very feasible to be able to cast this for like 4 or 5 and just refill your hand and deal damage to everybody. So Think that's kind of cool. Vogar, Necropolis Tyrant, 5 mana, 4/4 menace. Whenever another creature dies during your turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. And whenever it dies, you draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it. So again, a little bit of that 1/1 counter synergy going on. Erebos Bleak Hearted. Um, since I don't have a lot of little creatures that are going to be dying, I'm not going to be paying the 2 life to draw cards, so we can cut that. Daryl, Hunter of Walkers. Um, what is this? During your upkeep, target opponent creates 3 walkers, and then you can tap it to deal 2 damage to target creature, which could be your own enrage thing, but also whenever a zombie dies, you get to draw a card. So it's a little bit of draw a card. It is some removal. Um, and it's easy to get rid of the walkers in this one. Naeth of the Dire Hunt. Whenever you fight, you get to draw a card, and whenever you have a creature that gets blocked, you get to draw a card once. So, like, if they block 4 of your creatures, you get to draw a card. That's not a bad little thing. Blessing of Frost, that last little snow thing, but distribute X 1/1 counters among any number of creatures you control, where X is the amount of snow spent, and then you get to draw a card for each creature with power 4 or greater. We should have a lot of creatures with better, more than 4 power. So, Ripjaw Raptor, Enrage, draw a card. Runic Armasaur, another dinosaur, but whenever an opponent activates a non mana ability on a creature or land, you get to draw a card. I don't know how relevant this is, but 3 mana for a 2/5 should be able to draw me a couple cards. Florian, 3/3 for strike. At the beginning of the post combat main phase, look at the top X cards of the library, where X is the total amount of life your opponent's lost this turn, and put one of them into exile, and the rest on the bottom. So a little bit of card draw there for 3 mana. Should be dealing some damage. Morbid Opportunist. Once per turn, whenever a creature dies, draw a card. Read the Bones. Scry 2, draw 2. Painful Truths. You lose 3, draw 3. Tribute to the World Tree. We don't have a bunch of small creatures here, so I am not going to put that in there. Elemental Bond is likely better in this deck. All right, Snake Umbra, and let's go with Keen Sense. Same card. Whenever a creature deals damage to a player, you get to draw a card. This would be better if I had those cards that deal 1 damage to all players, and then you get to draw 3 cards off of them. We're gonna cut those at this point. Explore, simple, sweet, draw a card, play an extra land. Season of Growth. If we keep enough fight cards in here, it's perfect because whenever you fight, you get to draw a card. Whenever you have a creature come into play, scry 1. Oh, that's a little bit problematic. I think we're all right. We'll keep this in for now. Knight's Whisper, lose 2, draw 2. Sylvan Library just sets the top really nice and potentially draws extra card. Sensei's Defining Top, best card in Commander. Infiltration Lens. Whenever equipped creature becomes blocked by a creature, you may draw 2. Indo has Menace, so it has to be drawn or blocked by 2, which is going to draw you 4 cards. Should be really nice. Elven Farsight. We did get rid of a bunch of creatures, so I think we're going to cut this as well. Maybe for a little bit more of a cheaper cantrip, we'll go with like Faithless Looting later on in the deck building process. And Protection. Last bit. We're doing all right. It feels smaller, which is nice. Eldrazi Monument. We don't have. I think we're gonna go for like equipment that give indestructible. We're not gonna have a lot of tokens or a bunch of small creatures to sacrifice. So Eldrazi Monument can go. Same thing with Stonehoof Chieftain. Not a dinosaur. It's 8 mana. Let's just cut this. We don't need that. Mithril Coat, Hammer of Nazan. We'll keep these two for the indestructible, and I might need to find one more. The Dark Steel equipment. Rite of Passage is really nice. Whenever a creature you control is dealt damage, put a 1/1 counter on it. Asks to survive, but that's giving everything that ability, which is really nice. Spider Silk Armor. Your creatures get +0/+1 and reach. A little bit better defense. I don't know if I'm going to care about that at this point. Let's cut that. All right, Rhythm of the Wild, Riot, can't be countered, can give haste. It's kind of a nice little deal. Invigorating Hot Spring, modified creatures have haste. It can put 1/1 counters on stuff. Um, so I think Invigorating Hot Spring, because we are kind of going away from the 1/1 counter, even though Indo naturally gets it. Oh, that's a bummer. Gift of Doom. It's a morph, sacrifice a creature. The creature gets death touch and indestructible. I still want to keep that around. I don't know how many small creatures that will have, but that's worth another indestructible spot. Inspiring Call, +1/+1 counters. The creatures with it get indestructible, and you draw a card for each of them. Fantastic either way. Tyrant Guard, same thing. Not drawing a card, but hexproof and indestructible for creatures with counters on them. And then some indestructible instants. So Tyvar Stand gives indestructible at instant speed. Tameo Safekeeping, indestructible at instant speed. Withstand Death, indestructible at an instant speed. Deflecting Swat, just moving a creature or a spell around. Cultist of the Absolute. We're not going to have a lot of creatures to sacrifice, but it's +3/+3 flying, death touch, ward, pay 3 life, and at the beginning, sacrifice a creature. I think we got to cut that. I don't have the ability to sacrifice a lot of creatures. Agent of the Shadow Thieves. If you attack the player opponent with the most life, the creature gets Indoraptor is going to get +1/+1 death touch, indestructible. Well worth it. Crashing Drawbridge taps to give haste. That's something that we can cut because we're not going to have a lot of creatures. So hopefully, Boots and Greaves can handle that bit. Heroic Intervention, Hexproof, Indestructible for everything, and Hajar, Loyal Bodyguard. You can sacrifice it. Legendary creatures you control get +1/+0. Gain Indestructible until end of turn. So a nice little protection bit. Um, we cut a lot. Let's see here. Da, da, da. That much. That's a good cut on the run through. We're at an hour 17. This is definitely going to be a 2-hour production at least. Let me go blow my nose and I'll be back shortly. All right. All right. All right. Good night, Barks. All right. All alone. All right. Let's move on. Let's do CMC and just see where everything's lying. Because that allows you to kind of see where you're thick or fat. I like my curve to be heavy in the 2, 3, 4 range. And this can help you tell if you have like too much in that 6, 7 plus range. And so that is important in my opinion to see how it's all laying. Because right now we're probably going to be really heavy in the 2 and 3 range with the fight cards. And the question ends up being is like, how important are those fight cards? Because how many do we have enough triggers? Inscription, I would prefer to pay the 5. So it's more of not necessarily where it looks like, but where would you be paying for it? Um, 2, yep, 2 right away. 1, 5, 4. Scales, Ozolith, 3. That ends up being a 3 as well. 2, 5, 4. Twos. 3. Darksteel Plate is the name of the card that was trying to think of earlier. 6, but that's a reduction, so hopefully that's at least sitting at like 3. I don't think I'll have to get it down to 1, but either way, that's fine. That's a 5er. 4 and 4. 4 and 2s. 1s. Generally, when I play Tyrant Guard, I fill it in with counters if I need to, but this is I don't want to feel bad about sacrificing it, so it generally is just sitting at 3. 3, 4. 3s. 5. I don't know where that's gonna be. So I've been able to cast it for black, black, red, but I wouldn't trust that. I go 3 and 4 with that. 2, 2. 4. 4. 5 or 6 and higher. All right. Let's see here. Normally start at the top. All right. Great Henge. I think it's going to be great in here. We'll just keep on telling that joke, right? Blood for the Blood God. I don't dislike it. It's also a reduced cost generally. I don't know how many I'll be able to hit, especially with my cards hopefully not being killed right off the bat. Um, I think, well, it seems it's probably 8 damage to each opponent. All right, discard your hand, then draw 8 cards. Not bad if somebody else wraths, stuff like that. Let's keep it around. Pestilence Demon, it's kind of on theme. Let's keep going with that. Apex Altasaur, yep, yep, and yep. All right. So to me, this is kind of a fat back end. So more than likely, I'm going to end up cutting Blood for the Blood God, unfortunately, because yeah, those 4 are big. That's 8, 8, 7, 9. This will be reduced a lot more, which helps, which is crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, Reaver Cleaver, 6 mana. I'm down for that. To just you pop that on Indoraptor or any of these big guys. There's plenty of things that are going to be nice with Reaver Cleaver. Gargos, still works. Just depends on how many fight cards end up in it. And there's, that handful of cards that do that. Now, Neheb can generate a lot of mana. I can at least see 6 in that post combat. If you're already at 6, 5 or 6, I kind of like that quite a bit. So at this point, we'll keep it around. Feels maybe traverse the outland ish. Vogar. Whenever another creature dies during your turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. And then if it dies, put a bunch of. And now, if we were more 1/1 counter themed, I think it'd be in there. But I think at this point, I think we get rid of it. It's a little too much to be just like drawing cards. Zangief stays. I think it's perfect with the fight theme. It's good to go. Vandal Blast. It's pretty good too. Um, don't have a lot of extra removal beyond the creatures, so cutting the best artifact removal seems like a bad move. Blanca, I think is really nice. But I think we end up cutting it in here as well because the 2 damage is not gonna be really relatable with Indo, and so I don't think we really need it. Even though it can become huge and a really good fighter, I think we cut that. I think Vrondus does great in this. I think we get a bunch of 5/4s out of this, and they're either blockers or can be aggressive or whatever they need to be. Rolling dice doesn't do anything for me in this one. Dread Slaver, Soul Collector, I think are fantastic. I really like the idea of stealing people's creatures in a fight deck potentially. And if there are any other cards like Dread Slaver or Soul Collector, put them in the comments. I think it'd be really fun to start stealing people's stuff. And then Inscription Abundance. I think there's some life gain. There's a lot of potential there. All right. Rakdos, Lord of Riots, is a nice reduction for those big dinosaurs. Yeah, Dread Slaver, like Zangief is but if I can reduce 3, that's simple in this deck. That's gonna be simple. And then Apex Altasaur, Polyraptor, Pestilence Demon. Those all get a lot easier. I have a couple of X creatures, I think, beyond this, and then that just feeds into that. So Rakdos, I think, fits really well in here at this point. Cacophodon, we're good with that. Deep Slumber Titan in that 4 spot. I should keep that separate for now. I like the idea of it. I think it's competing with better cards. I think unfortunately we got to cut that one. That feels bad. I really like it in this deck, but Ripjaw Raptor's perfect. Blessing of Frost. I think we're gonna end up drawing a couple cards off that. Not a ton, but also 1/1 counters. We're already probably doing the snow thing because cheap fight and then the recasting. But if we get rid of one of those, then I think we get rid of this and then the others. So I don't want to go snow theme everywhere. Naeth can probably die really easy for us, but I think people are gonna want to block their stuff. Uh, Fight or become blocked, draw a card. Yeah, man. All right. All right. This ends up being more expensive than I want it to be. So that probably ends up getting cut, but it's on theme right now. I think Daryl's awesome in this deck. Hammer of Nazan, yeah. Conductor of Cacophony, Forerunner of Empire. I think that just stays either way. I think that because you're automatically going to end up getting the 1 damage trigger. Fire Confluence feels really good. Again, artifact removal and then layered 1 damages. Feels good to me. Chandra, whenever you cast a spell, this emblem is 5 damage to a creature or player. 4 damage to target creature. We don't have much there. We have plenty of creature removal. Um, I think we can cut that. I don't I wanna play with it. I like the card a lot, but, Sulfim, alright. Double non-combat damage, and so that basically shuts off Indo. They're just gonna sacrifice a non-token creature, which is not something I'm interested in. Double that damage, that player and permanent instead. But it helps out with Pyrohemia style really nice. It turns those fight cards on really nice. It just kinda turns Indo off on doing the damage. Um Still like it. Still like it. Court of Embereth, the 3/1 is negligible. I mean, I'm gonna kill it really quick. X damage to each opponent if I'm still the monarch. Um, I'm probably not gonna be the monarch because I'm gonna have less creatures, so I'm gonna be able to get dinged pretty easy. Urban Daggertooth for that proliferate still works. It still works at this point. Draugr Necromancer, like I said, found at this point, we're gonna be killing hopefully enough of opponent's creatures. Creatures I control have haste, and then should be able to fight. I like that. Last Laugh is dealing a bunch of damage and more of a Wrath type card, so I'm okay with that. Pestilence, Pyrohemia. That's why we built the deck here. So we're thick-ish. We're on the heavy side of the 4 drops, which is okay. Dinosaur as well. um, there's 1/1 counters as well. Hammer of Nazan. Daryl is pretty cool, especially 4/4. Neath at a 3/3 is a little worrisome, especially at 4 mana, but we're okay. We're gonna give ourselves a count after 3, 2, 1. Let's see here. All right. It's a little thick. So, but we might have it down to like 1 pile, which would be nice. All right, Raging Raptors, auto include either do 2 damage, 2 life to each opponent. Each opponent, I think, is the important part. So am I gonna be able to do that on turn, you know, on the next upkeep? Indestructible is nice because if it is a creature, it'll stick around through the damage. We can keep that. Shadow of the Warp, reducing creatures by 2, the first one. I think I'd be okay with that. That makes a ton of sense to me at this point. Gadrak, um, how many creatures am I killing is a question. Um, I don't think I'm gonna have a lot of artifacts other than but Gadrak's cheap. He's a good fighter. Same thing. Ronus is really nice. Indestructible allows him to stick around for the damage, so Pyrohemia never goes away. Weathered Sentinels. Defender, Vigilance, Reach, Trample. It can attack players who attacked you during their last turn as though it didn't have Defender. And whenever it attacks, it gets +3/+3, indestructible until end of turn. So it turns into a 5/8 indestructible vigilance, reach, trample. For 3 mana, it's going to be hard to kill. Let's keep it around. Decadent Dragon, looking at 2 cards, creating a treasure. Oh yeah, that's why it's 3/4. It's card advantage to that degree. I like it. Painful Truth still works. Read the Bones, Morbid Opportunist, nice little butt there. Florian at a 3/3. Um, this is just basically going to allow me to look at probably the top 3 cards for the most part and put 1. The beginning of your post-combat main phase, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the total amount of life your opponent's lost this turn. Exile one of those cards and put the rest on the bottom. You may play the exiled card this turn. Oh, but not for free, and it has to be this turn. All right, Florian's gone. Thank you for reading. Reading is important. Runic Armasaur, nice little butt, nice little draw. I got to think of how many times, like, what would I expect to draw out of this? No Enrage, which is a little bit rough. I would want it to draw me 2 to 3 cards, and then I'd be happy. Is that what I'm saying? Ooh. It always depends. We'll keep it for now. We'll see how many draw spells we end up with. Mithril Coat stays. Rite of Passage stays. Because that can help some of those little bigger toughness ramp cards. Rhythm of the Wild gives haste or a 1/1 counter. Not a bad deal. Gift of Doom is staying. Inspirational Call for the 1/1 counters. We'll end up having to see how much of that actually comes into play. Tyrant Guard is really nice with like Rakdos Lord of Riots as well. Chandra's Incinerator also gets reduced and is some nice little removal potentially in this deck. All right. 1/4 reach hexproof. Whenever it's dealt damage, you gain 1 life and create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. I don't think that 1/1's gonna stick around. I think we do gotta cut it, unfortunately. Bummer. Tunneling Geopede. 3/2, 1 damage to each opponent. Just 3/2. That's gonna be rough. Man. I think we gotta end up cutting it as well, unfortunately. I'd rather have cards that can deal damage to opponents and creatures, not just creatures. So, ugh. Basilisk Callers for that, life linkness, which can be nice for some of this stuff, but it's really just for Indoraptor at this point. I don't think we need, the Death Touch isn't necessary, but the life link and the trample is nice. So we can keep Shadow Spear. Buddy, these are all threes. This is a 3-drop spot. Oof. All right, Shadow Spear, Haunted Cloak. Like I said, I really like the idea of Vigilance on Indoraptor as well. So I like that. Recasting fight cards is probably important. Might want Backdraft Dragon instead in this style. Just be like fight, 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 fight. But Caltrops, I think, is going to do some nice work. Auntie Blight, I'm probably dealing enough damage to myself, which should be nice. Domri is mana, a boost, and fight. It's everything I want. Plenty of dinosaurs for fight to work. 3 mana seems rough. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. And it's mana. I mean, I get why people like these spells because you can cheat on stuff, but it's just I think it's hard for me to be willing to cast it. Um Trample. The trample is what keeps this here. Um in the fight. So Plague Spitter, 1 damage to each creature and each player. I like it. And whenever it dies, which it will, but that's also fine. That just sticks it. All right. At the end of any turn, if there are no creatures in play, bury it. And then Withering Wisps deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. You cannot spend more than black in this way for each number of snow covered swamps you control. So likely not going to be able to get a lot. Um, and actually I think I saw something weird. Sorry. Saying that basically I'd have to ask a judge on this, but so if we have snow basics and maybe I do like Urborg and turn my mountains and forests into also swamps, I don't know if it has the snow type swamp. Yeah, I think that so if that's a no, if that doesn't work like that, if Urborg would turn them into snow swamps, dope. If they don't, this probably isn't worth it, even though it's a nice. And if we get rid of that, we probably get rid of the other. Oh, there's 4 snow things. We'll keep it for now. All right, going through the 3 spot. There's plenty. I think there's a lot of good cards there, but also plenty of cards that can go either way. So, all right, 2-spot. All right. Drover the Mighty, fine. Ordeal of Nylea, fine. Squirrel Tribelder, Steve. Gyre Sage, I think I like it in this deck. There's plenty of stuff. Otepec, Huntmaster. I don't think this affects enough. I don't think I have enough dinosaurs to make this matter. So we can cut that. Marauding Raptor, plenty of creatures for that to help out. You control, deals 1 damage to it. Get +2/+0. Till end of turn. What the fuck? All right. Dockside still works. Farseek. Yep. Fertile Ground. Running 6. Do we think that's going to matter? Just returning a land back from your hand. Is that something that we care about? Probably not. It's probably worth getting rid of. Zerta Druid still makes sense to me. Explore, Knight's Whisper, nice little cantrips. I think we're gonna want Sylvan Library. I don't know how fast or slow the deck is. That generally depends. This is generally one of my first cuts if the deck is rolling smooth. Like if I don't need more draw, I take this out and add in less powerful draw. Swiftfoot Boots, Greaves, Agent, yeah. Hajar, Loyal Bodyguard. I don't know how many legendary creatures I have. Not a lot, but it's probably worth just keeping around. Heroic Intervention, Price of Progress, Druid's Call, Rakdos. Okay, so here's the other question is who cares about a Druid's Call when I can make a bunch of little like 1/1/1 and then kill it again? I guess it matters if they can fight. The fighting creates a bunch of little 1/1s. All right, maybe that can stick. Rakdos Charm can deal a lot of damage. Limdual's Hex. All right, here's some of those little. This is where the spot of X amount of damage can be done. Talania's Crown. Poet's Quill just for +1/+1 and lifelink. I still like Shadow Spear for that aspect, but we can get rid of that. Livewire Lash. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell, this creature deals 2 damage to any target. Probably not worth it. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have that much where, I don't think it's gonna do that much. Fight. 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 That's where we're at. That's a fat twos. We're definitely gonna have to figure out how to um lower that part. We'll have to I am not displeased with any of those at this point. All right. 1 spot. Yes. Deathrite Shaman. I think we'll cut it. I don't think it's going to stick around for very long. Curse of Opulence worries me a little bit as well because I don't have much early attack game, so I can't create it. But we'll keep it because that's potential. Sensei's Divining Top, Lens, yes. Indestructible, Deflection. Rancor is interesting. I don't know if that trample matters much because we're not. I mean, it's going to be nice, but if they block, it's going to block most of it. So I think we can get rid of it. I'm going to have to probably do a deeper dive on how many 1/1 counters are actually happening out there. So we won't worry about that right now. Soulscar Mage. We might have to go around and see how many triggers we're actually doing. Reckless Rage. Oh, because it does. Yeah. Yep. Tail Swipe is nice. Fight. All right. Still a little silent. let's all right, let's count how many cards we have left. It feels looking like 120 maybe. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 40. $40. 36. Pretty damn close. That's kind of silly, but that's 116. All right. I don't think we're gonna get anywhere near done tonight. Well, my aim is probably I'm gonna do type, and then we're gonna go through and do function, and then we're gonna be done. Doesn't matter where we're at. That's just what's gonna happen. So, um, instance, creatures, sorceries. Where we got enough room there. Let's move that up, I guess. Boop. Then creatures, enchantment, artifact. I will likely lean towards the instant fight cards rather than the sorceries, because that's why wouldn't you? Or instance. Yeah, this might be a little spell slingy. Oh, might be able to use in the one of the that Umezawa that does spells from the graveyard. That might be nice. I'm not going to pull it out now, but might play around with that idea. Enchantments. Let's see here. Oh, we do have a walker. Artifacts. Instance. All right. Plenty of enchantments, huh? Kind of surprised by that amount. Creatures. Bop, bop, bop. All right. All right. Let's look through the instance. I like some of that life gain, the counters, inspiring call. I would like to have probably a small, slim part of counters. So I think inspiring call works along with heroic intervention. I like that 2 mana dealing a bunch of damage. So price of progress, Rakdos makes sense to me. Even if that's just like, 2/2/2, it works. Target's command. Being able to pick 2 is nice. All right, pit fight, prize fight, pounce, ancient animus works here. Withstand death is the indestructible part. We'll have to see how many parts of indestructible we have. We'll do that in the next section. So that works for me at this point. Tyvar stand, deflection swat. We'll cut it. I think we're going to lean into the indestructible part. And why am I worried about the indestructible part? Is that a question that I need to ask? Do I care about the indestructible part? It's nice not to have to worry about like Indoraptor dying nearly as much. But I think that might be a legitimate question here. All right. Reckless Rage, Tail Swipe, Instant Speed, Fight, Fight, Fight. That all makes sense. Domry makes sense. I don't have any problem with that. All right. I think Traverse the Outlands is going to be really nice. Vandablast, Blessing of Frost. Still like that for now. Fiery Confluence. Draw, draw, fight. Ramp, ramp, ramp. A little bit of draw and ramp. The nice little. I wonder if Up the Beanstalk makes sense in here, but we'll have to see. Explore's fine. Night's Whisper. Flame Rift is a nice little bit. Bushwhack is fight or a creature. All right, so here's how many fight cards are we talking about here? Savage Stomp makes sense. Prey Upon, Blizzard Brawl, Primal Might. Like, I don't hate any of these other than maybe Prey Upon. Giving Indestructible, go and get in a land, go like having those different options. The Prey Upon is just a fight card, which probably makes it cuttable. So between also probably shouldn't be doing this right now, but fight targets 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that we definitely are going to want to, and there's definitely, I think there's another fight part in here as well. Okay, let's keep the fight aspect off to the side just to see where that ends up. I think it's not a bad deal. Not mad about those instances of sorceries at this point. Enchantments. Gimli's Reckless Might. That is a fight card. Last Laugh. I like these. Descent makes a ton of sense. Shadow of the Warp. We still got a lot of creatures. It's ramp that's going to be able to stick around for your creatures. Does a little pinging throughout the deal for non-creature spells. It's nice. Let's keep it for now. I like Rite of Passage. Rhythm of the Wild adds a little bit of that 1/1 counter stuff. Cartouche of Strength. Withering Wisps. Ordeal of Nylea. Still makes sense. Fertile Ground. Season of Growth is still there. Sylvan Library. Indestructible. Druid's Call. It's getting a little iffy. It's not really in whatever's going on. So let's cut Druid's Call. I mean, I'm sure it can make a bunch of little 1/1s, but I don't have a sack outlet for that. They'll likely die in a Pyrohemia. They can chump block a bit, but seems like whatever. Limdual's Hex. I'm still into that. +3/+0 and 1 damage. Fall of Gil-galad. Wild Growth. Hardened Scales. All right, let's pull the fight cards. Fight. 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 All right, these are not targeted. Well, I guess that's kind of targeted. And this would be kind of targeted too, but these are persistent. So ability to fight multiple times versus one time just shots. All right. Artifacts, Great Henge, Reaver Cleaver, giving the trample and the treasures. All right. So the question still is indestructible necessary? It's really nice for that enrage bit, not worrying about it. Um Hammer of Nazan. We might end up getting rid of some of those instants, but maybe Season of Growth allows us to draw. Maybe it's get rid of the equipment. Shadow Spear still seems really nice. Haunted Cloak. Ugh. All right. um, it's doing enough. Like the lifelink's going to be really nice with Indoraptor if people are taking the damage because you still gain that life. Mithril Coat, Hammer. I'm slowing down on what to cut anyway, so we don't have much time. Flame or Fiend Lash is dope. That's that 1/1 counter stuff. I don't know how much we need of that. Quit or artifacts to target creature player. That can go on anything. Caltrops, I think, is a really cool ad in this kind of deck because it's back and forth. It's my creatures and rages. It's their creatures. They can't attack with 1/1s or 1 toughness. Sword of Once and Future. Reaver Cleaver. Hammer of Nazan. I guess the other question ends up being, is like old Gnawbone worth putting in here if Reaver Cleaver is going in? Just making a ton of treasures there at the end. Probably not. Old Gnawbone seems to be just overkill for me. It's crazy. It does a lot of work, but all right, fight cards. We got any fighting in here? Nah. That's putting a 1/1 counter on target artifact or creature you control activate only as a sorcery. Cycling 2 is not bad. All right, creatures. Dino, Enrage, Enrage Inducer, Enrage. Gargos definitely has enough spells at this point. Neheb. Yeah, making that indestructible and just with Pyrohemia seems good. Zangief seems good. That's nice little removal. Vrandros is going to do some work there. I like Dreadslaver, Soul, Kakaf with Enrage. Naeth? They're going to block. They're oh, maybe they won't. They'll just take the damage? Is that what we're saying? Daryl, Conductor, Forerunner, Sophim. Let's cut Sophim. I think that just means people are going to sacrifice their creatures, and I'm not necessarily into that. All right. Proliferate, steal creatures, land. Clythos is damage, potentially. Gadrak is treasures, and not bad ones. So, Ronus the Indomitable. Yes. Weathered Sentinel makes a ton of sense as well. Decadent Dragon, Morbid, Runic Armisar. It's questionable. We can get rid of it. I probably favor it too much because it's a dinosaur. Chandra's Incinerator feels like it still has plenty there. Put that many 1/1 counters on it. Jeez. Like a Flame Rift, turn this into a 6/6 that can remove stuff. I like that this can be just an Enrage trigger as well. Because you remove X. It could just be 1. Deal 1 damage to whatever. To any target. Deals damage to you. Yeah. Plague Spitter still makes sense to me. Drover the Mighty, I don't know how much I care about that at this point. I think I'll have to play around with the creature mana ramp. Um, like I don't hate this, but I don't need that either. I like that Gyre Sage gets bigger. Dope with that. Let's go a Tri-Builder. Nice little block. Go get a basic land. All good for me. Marauding Raptor. Yep. Dockside. Zerta. Hajar. Just giving Indoraptor indestructible until end of turn is probably worth it, but I'm going to have to go through Soulscar Mage, Ovenwald. Let's see how many legendary creatures we have for Hajar. Probably not many. 1 with Auntie. 2 with Ronus. That doesn't matter. 2 with Gadrak. 3 with Daryl. 4 with Naeth. 5 with Rakdos. 6 with Vrondros. Zangief is kind of indestructible. 9. There's some upside there. I don't hate that. All right. Fighting. Ovenwald. Let's see here. Doesn't forces a block, but I don't care about that. Does some fighting. That's some fighting. All right, and these are permanents doable over and over again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I don't have any Hydras. It's probably not worth having Gargos in there. Because again, I'd rather have it be with the Enrage abilities of things. That's at least a reason to cut it. Fights up to 1 other target creature. Scry 2. Scrying 2 ain't bad right off the bat. All right. Let's split it up into function and go through it one more time. Call it a night. All right. Fighting is removal. That's basically, there's a little bit in there. It's there for the fight. Removals. It's probably worth the removal, and that end up there for the mana. Likely. All right. Protection, Soulscar Mage. Yeah. All right. This is going to go away. -1/-1 counters would be nice, but it's not going to survive a lot of damage, and I'm already going to be pretty stacked in that removal bit. Creeping Bloodsucker is just dealing the damage. Zerta, ramp, ramp, ramp. Damage creature and player. It's weak removal, but I'm still gonna say that it's removal. Same thing with Auntie, Tyrant Guard, draw. I generally would consider casting that. I don't know what the fuck that is, and that might be the reason to cut it. Um, boom, ramp. That's most likely ramp. Stealing creatures, which is fun. A bit of removal. Instead of that, draw, ramp. Technically ramp. Steal. That's a token creator. So I'll just, that's removal, that's ramp, removal, token, removal. See, there's just like a lot of removal counters. These are just random ass. We can put those off to the side. You don't have to see them. Boost, protections, ramp, always ramp. Um, Play graveyard. Oh, Enrage, protection. That's just damage to the face. It's probably an Enrage thing, which we don't have a place for that. Ugh. All right. Draw, counters, ramps, damage, protection, draw, ramp, damage, protection. That's a counters bit. Ramp, damage everybody. Draw. This ends up being removal. Draw. Protection. Damage, protection, draw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We're probably lacking in the draw, like looking at it. So we're not going to take anything from there. We're at 15. We want to be in 15 to 20, but we'll have to play around with it a little bit too. Protection's probably high because I'm going to have to make some decisions. But heroic, this permanent gains hexproof, indestructible, gain 2 life. This is just indestructible. This is hexproof and indestructible and bigger X, instant speed. Rhythm of the Wild, putting counters on stuff. We're not super like haste. Rhythm of the Wild can probably go away. Gift of Doom is still nice. I think we can cut Withstand Death. Agent of Shadows is still nice for Indo. Boots and Greaves. ... Let's see here. 3 for 2. Jeez. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. For now, let's cut Hajar as well. Just be happy with Tyrant Guard. 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. We might end up getting rid of Gift of Doom. I don't want to be sacrificing many creatures at this point. Tyrant Guard is dope. That's going to protect a lot of stuff. All right. That's where we're at right now. All right. So, little boost. Talania's Crown. Shadow Spear. Haunted Cloak. If Haunted Cloak didn't have Vigilance, it would be a problem. Because that's what it's there. But I like that trample. That's why Crown's there as well. One damage to enchanted creature. Shadow Spear still might feel like the best. Oh, yeah. All right. That's where we're at. Talania and Haunted Cloak go. Making some good progress on this round. I still like Sword of Once and Future. That might get replaced with something that can do a bunch of the cards in the graveyard. So it's probably Backdraft Hellkite. Ugh. Ugh. But I like everything that you can steal here. So at this point, I'd like to be able to do this because they're great with fighting. So keep those. I think Ronus gets to stay, definitely. Weathered Sentinels probably has to go. It doesn't ramp me, it doesn't draw me, it doesn't remove, it's not dealing damage to everybody, it's not protecting anything. It's just kind of a nice little deal. I think Fiend Lash is well worth it. I think this one, it's a little bit more work, but can go over the top. It's more of like an Enrage instead of a how much damage can you do. So I dig that. Um, Polyraptor, making the tokens. Vrondros makes a ton of sense. Urban Daggertooth. I wonder how many 1/1 counters we got going on now at this point. So when I said after this, all right. So I think that matters for everything. These three matter. Rite of passage just kind of happens. I think that's good in the deck. These are reliant on how many things are going on. So how many counters have we talked about that go on things? All right, Tyrant Guard is nice about it. But that's just like a protection spot for Indoraptor. That adds a counter. That is looking for stuff. That adds counters. Mhm. Let's see here. All right. Damage, 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 damage. I like Price of Progress, Rakdos Charm, Atarka's Command, Flame Rift. Because basically, that's 12 onto Indo. Atarka's is 9. And Price of Progress probably right around 6. And Rakdos Charm is probably around 4 to 5, but has the removal aspect. I think we can get rid of Limb Duel's Hex and keep Creeping Bloodsucker. Any 1/1 counters on there? Nope. Let's go with mana. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So we can cut, 5 to 10 from there. We'll do. All right. Still like Traverse the Outlands. Those are auto includes. Descent into Avernus is perfect. I think Ordeal into Nihilea is good. Aura, Soul Ring, Great Henge adds counters. Reaver Cleaver is kind of later game, but that really will put stuff over the top and allow me to just maybe put a bunch into um my enchantments or whatever I need to. I'm down with that. The Heb also is probably bonkers. I like Cacophodon. All right, Raging Raptors is definitely in. Rotting Raptors, Zertaw. I really like Domri in here as well. Okay, so the question ends up being, I think I like Curse of Opulence. And then we're just talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think Gyre Sage is going to get big enough. Sakura Tribe Elder. I like Clythos, I think. And I think we can maybe cut these 3. I think Rakdos is a fine cut at this point. I don't know how many, like, I just don't know how much we're gonna actually allow it to do. Shadow in the Warp. You know, the price says that it's good. I think it's just kind of rare. Gadrak. I think we can get rid of that too. You know, we get 1 or 2 treasures, but I don't think that's really worth it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So we got 3. Good job, Lau. No counters. Looking for counters. Gyre Sage. Great Henge puts it on. Ordeal of Nylea. 1, 2, 3. In there. All right. And removal. Reckless Rage. Do we care about the fighting, or do we? I mean, Nylea or Naeth. Naeth cares about fighting. That's about it. Reckless Rage feels good. Mana Blast. Fiery Confluence. Last Laugh. Bop. Bop. Caltrops. Still feels okay. Silverclad is okay. Pestilence Demon. Zangief. Zangief needs that fighting. Or, attack and he can be blocked type thing. Conductor of Cacophony. That is a 1/1 counter, but that's later. Forerunner of the Empires. We have a couple of big bits, but Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker. Like, if we deal 1 damage, we can kind of ping stuff around. But I feel like this is a much smaller spot. It has to deal it to the opponent. Chandra's Ignition or Incinerator can go. Anti-Blight. That still works. Plague Splitter, yeah. Gimli's. Yep. Apex. Altasaur. Fall of Gil-galad. Cartouche. Getting into a lot of fights, but if it's legendary, yeah. Do-do-do. 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 Okay. 1/1 counters on it. All right. Choose target creature you control. Cast a spell during your main phase. The creature you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Well, that part doesn't matter. This cares about 1/1 counters, which is all right. 1/1 counter on it fights. So this one also cares about 1/1 counters. This puts a 1/1 counter on. Can get you land. Get an indestructible. Bigger. Puts a 1/1 counter on. So I think we can Pit Fight and Pounce can maybe go at this point. They're just fighting. Just fighting. Gets me a treasure. If we kick it, can we kick it? No, that's kind of fucking up. Counters. Can add a counter. Nope. Adds counters. Nope. There we go. Plenty of counters there. But plenty of removal too. Once 21, 22. 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 30, 30. 30 pieces of removal is a lot. I'm probably going to have to cut that in half, which makes it hard to have a lot of fight cards, but or at least working on some of them at this point. And I guess the other question that I was thinking is how many dinosaurs do I actually have? So I might go through and just run through it really quick. Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 18, 19. 19 cards that care about +1/+1 counters, along with Indoraptor makes it 20. At this point, that still matters. Let's figure out how many dinosaurs we have, along with just counting 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 16, 1, 22, 4, 40, 41, 50, 5, 60, 6, 80, 90, 93. So we got under 100. Good for us. Thank you. It's all good. Thanks for joining. I was about to shut down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 dinos plus Indoraptor does not make a tribal deck. We'll say that much. But we got under 100. We got about 30 more cards to cut. I've been going for almost 2.5 hours. I think that's gonna end up being it. All right. So if you're let's see here. Let me so or I think I'm gonna call it a night. I'm under 100 cards. Normally I like to get in the 70s, but 2.5 hours into this, we made some really good progress from the beginning of where we're at. We cut over 100 cards at this point. We're doing all right. So if you enjoyed, if you want to build Indoraptor, let me know how you're building it. That'll be a lot of fun. Like if you want to go the Black B Act route, stuff like that. Otherwise, I hope you have a good night. Appreciate everybody that came out and made comments and had chat. All right. Have a good night. Bye.